As market capitalization over 100 trillion rupiah, Bank Syariah Indonesia is now a big cap stock. Good afternoon, viewers. Market Headlines is ready to provide you a number of informations from the business, economic, and capital market sectors. With me, Wicky Adrian. This is Market Headlines. The government continues to boost the COVID-19 vaccination program with a target of 182 million people, or 70% of Indonesia's population. The hope is that by doing so, herd immunity can be achieved.
Coordinating Minister for Economic Affairs, Erlangga Hartarto, hopes that the number of vaccinations a day can continue to be increased. The government will increase the number of vaccinations from current 150,000 a day to 1 million vaccine a day. Thus, vaccinations for 182 million people is expected to be completed in accordance with President Joko Widodo's direction, namely by the end of 2021, precisely on December. Currently, the government has carried out two phases of vaccinations, namely health workers, to public service workers, and the elderly people.
Target herd immunity itu kan 70%, artinya 182 juta. Nah itu pemerintah sudah melakukan pembelian vaksin untuk 182 juta dan tentunya ini diharapkan bisa diselesaikan di akhir Desember 2021. Nah, target daripada vaksinasi yang sekarang sekitar 150.000 terus dinaikkan dan diharapkan bisa mencapai sekitar 900.000 sampai 1 juta per hari.
The government is targeting the COVID-19 vaccine to reach 182 million people within a year. The government will bring about 480 million doses of vaccine stocks for 2 injections per person, with 15% of the stock as the reserve. Jakarta, Ade Firmansyah for IDX Channel.
The government and business players have been promoting a planned private vaccination scheme as a form of gotong royong, or mutual cooperation, to help the country achieve herd immunity faster. The scheme, dubbed the Gotong Royong Vaccination Program, has recorded 6,000 private firms that want to buy the vaccines. The scheme, dubbed the Gotong Royong Vaccination Program, will allow business owners to buy their own supplies of vaccine to be distributed to their employees. The vaccines will be administered by private healthcare facilities or vaccinators who are also involved in the government's free vaccination drive. Minister of State-Owned Enterprises Erick Thohir just had a meeting with the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce to discuss this Gotong Royong vaccines. As a result, Erick confirmed that there are more than 6,000 private companies that have registered to buy Gotong Royong vaccines. So far, demand for Gotong Royong vaccines hit 7.5 million vaccines.
Kadin sendiri kemarin baru saja rapat dengan saya bahwa mereka sudah ada kurang lebih 6.644 perusahaan yang mendaftar di Kadin, yang kurang lebih kebutuhan vaksinnya hampir 7,5 juta. Ini yang makanya kita lihat vaksin ini tentu sangat penting.
The government is expecting to achieve 6.3% annual growth in Indonesia's non-oil and gas exports this year. Many steps are taken to seize export, one of which is by making 1,500 small businesses to export every year.
The government is pushing Indonesia's non-oil and gas exports this year, as the government is expecting to achieve 6.3% annual growth in Indonesia's non-oil and gas exports to be $164.8 billion in 2021. The Director General of National Export Development of the Ministry of Trade, Kasan, stated that to achieve this increase in export, the government will boost small and medium enterprises by targeting as many as 1,500 new SMEs to export per year.
Kami di Kementerian Perdagangan menargetkan sebagai bagian dari upaya untuk menciptakan UKM ekspor ini, minimal bisa menciptakan atau mencetak UKM ekspor banyak 1.500 UKM ekspor setiap tahunnya, yang diharapkan di 10 tahun ke depan jumlahnya bisa lebih dari 500 atau lebih dari 100.000 UKM ekspor, yang tentu menjadi bagian kontributor terhadap peningkatan ekspor non-migas maupun ekspor dan juga tentunya kepada ekonomi nasional.
This coupled with strategic steps in increasing exports, starting from providing facilities for financing SMEs for export, increasing capacity of export SMEs, facilitating promotion and digitizing export SMEs. From Jakarta, Adi Firmansyah for IDX Channel.
Central Bank is worried about U.S. Treasury yields, which came off their highs after congressional testimony from Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell.
United States of America's government pushed long-term bond yields off their high. However, this made Efek developing countries' economy, according to the Bank Indonesia. Therefore, Indonesia's central bank is now staying alert. Bank Indonesia's Executive Director of Economics and Monetary Policy Department, Yoga Afandi, predicts that the yield on United States bond with a tenure of 10 years will continue to increase in line with the good economic recovery trend.
Agak mengganggu yaitu kenaikan Treasury, karena seiring dengan optimisme dari perbaikan ekonomi Amerika Serikat, yield US Treasury terutama yang 10 tahun itu sudah mulai meningkat. Ini diperkirakan akan terus meningkat, dan ini yang bisa kemudian mengganggu keseimbangan dari portfolio. Tetapi memang kalau kita pelajari secara historis, kita memang melihat bahwa kenaikan yield ini memang sesuatu yang wajar, masih dalam hal yang wajar, sehingga dia tidak akan mengubah portfolio inflow. Kita harapkan tidak mengubah terlalu drastis untuk tahun ini. Tetapi tentu sebagai kewaspadaan kita harus melihat bagaimana perkembangan dari Amerika Serikat.
The 10-year U.S. Treasury yield rose about 1.3% for the first time in nearly a year on Tuesday. The yield curve steepened as the expectations of extended fiscal and monetary stimulus alongside hopes of an economic upswing added momentum to the reflation trade. Jakarta, Rahaja Pakbo for IDX Channel.
Market headlines will be right back after the break. Stay tuned.
Tren transisi ke energi baru dan terbarukan tidak membuat industri energi fosil lantas surut. Seperti apa dampaknya terhadap sektor migas?
Turunnya atau rendahnya harga minyak dan gas yang sangat drastis turunnya, adanya pandemi yang membuat terbatasnya pergerakan.
Langkah yang dilakukan apa nih Pak?
Hingga hari ini saya kira Brent hari ini sekitar 55. Ini sesuatu yang positif untuk industri yang itu kira.
Hello, I'm Clara Antawijaya. I'm Associate Producer and News Presenter on Market Headlines. As Market Headlines starts at 4:30 p.m., which is in line with the closing market, therefore we summarize market conditions only for you. And my job in here as a journalist, I give concise and accurate news for the audience. And also, being a journalist is not only a job for me, but it is also a passion.
Ya, Wall Street memulai 2021 dengan aksi jual di mana salah satu indeks utamanya yakni Dow Jones melemah 1,25%. Ya, indeks harga saham gabungan naik signifikan pemirsa. Kita akan mencoba menganalisis beberapa sentimen isu.
Proyeksikan bahwa perdagangan kita masih ada potensi untuk menguat ya.
Akankah menjadi sentimen yang positif yang ikut mendorong juga?
Biasanya sangat kuat gitu mempengaruhi bursa saham kita ya.
Welcome back. The Ministry of Finance recorded a deficit in the state revenue and expenditure budget for January 2021 of 45.7 trillion rupiah, or equivalent to 0.26% of GDP.
The Ministry of Finance recorded a deficit in state revenue and expenditure budget for January 2021 of 45.7 trillion rupiah, or equivalent to 0.26% of Indonesia's GDP. Finance Minister Sri Mulyani said that the state budget deficit was due to the realization of state revenues of 100.1 trillion rupiah, or a contraction of 4.8% compared to the achievement of the same period last year of 105.1 trillion rupiah. Realization of state revenue is equivalent to 6.2% of the 2021 target.
5,7 triliun atau 0,26% dibandingkan tahun lalu yang 34,8 triliun, mungkin tidak terlalu banyak berbeda. Namun ada kenaikan 31 karena memang bulan Januari tahun lalu belum mengalami COVID.
The Minister of Finance said that sluggish state revenue was mainly caused by tax deposits, which were still small due to the impact of the pandemic. She added that the impact of the pandemic had a tremendous impact on the economy. As a result, the state budget must work extra hard to keep the economy stable. From IDX Channel's coverage team, reported.
The government has announced the realization of state revenue and spending throughout January 2021. And to get it more clearly, let's take a look at the following infographics. The first one is January 2021 state revenue realization. The total revenue is 101 trillion rupiah, declined by 4.8% year-on-year. For the tax revenue, in detail, we have 68.5 trillion rupiah, customs and excise, 12.5 trillion rupiah, and non-tax revenue, 19.1 trillion rupiah. We collaborate or we compile data from Ministry of Finance and IDX Channel research. Realization of state revenue in January 2021 was supported by an increase in customs and excise revenues, where tax revenues and non-tax state revenues contracted. In detail, tax revenue was only 68.5 trillion rupiah, or decreased by 15.3% year-on-year compared to the same period in January 2020 of 80.8 trillion rupiah. Finance Minister Sri Mulyani said that the decline in tax revenues was due to the contraction of oil and gas tax income and non-oil and gas tax revenues, respectively minus 19.8% and minus 15.2%. The decline was more or less influenced by the fiscal incentives introduced by the government for taxpayers for the business, not to mention because labor absorption has not returned to normal yet. And meanwhile, the positive growth was shown by customs and excise revenues, which was supported by the realization of excise that reached 9.1 trillion rupiah, grew by 495% compared to January 2020. So from the revenue side, let's shift to state spending data in the next graphic. This is the January 2021 state spending realization of Indonesia. The central government spending as much as 94.7 trillion rupiah. Transfer to region 50.3 trillion rupiah. Village funds 0.8 trillion rupiah. And the total spending of it as much as 145.8 trillion rupiah. 5.3% of state budget target. The realization of state expenditure in January, which amounted to 145.8 trillion, grew by 4.2% from last year's realization of 139.9 trillion rupiah. If we dig deeper, central government spending consists of spending by ministries and state institutions, which includes expenditures on personnel, good expenditures, capital expenditures, and social assistance. Meanwhile, the realization of transfers to regions and village fund until January 2021 has reached 6.4% of the final 2021 target of nearly 800 trillion rupiah. Regarding the increase in state spending, the government hopes that with a boost in state spending, the national economy this year can grow positively by 5%. In the short term, in the first quarter of 2021, the economic growth is expected to be better than the realization in the fourth quarter of 2020 of minus 2.9 or minus 2.19% year-on-year. And viewers, based on the total state revenue and expenditure, how big was the state budget deficit recorded during the last month? Let's check it on the next graphic. This is January 2021 state budget realization. The revenue as much as 145.8 trillion rupiah. Meantime, the spending is 100.1. The state budget deficit as much as 45.7 trillion rupiah. The deficit of 45.7 trillion rupiah was up 31.5% compared to the same position in 2020. In this regard, Minister of Finance Sri Mulyani said that this increase is deficit occurred because the COVID-19 pandemic had not yet occurred in early 2020, while the government budget at the beginning of 2021 has been adjusted to the conditions of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is still continuing. Saying this condition may bang Indonesia's global market economist Merdel Gunarto assessed that the position of the state budget deficit is still very low against GDP and is still on track to the projection of the 2021 state budget deficit of 5.7%. So that it is still supportive for the national economic recovery. On the other hand, in-depth economist Nailul Huda says that the government will revise the budget again by reducing spending and adjusting revenue targets. So inevitably, there is a budget that must be sacrificed or reallocated, including official travel funds, meetings, even the infrastructure of W or SWF budget. In the midst of this condition, the government admits that it is currently boosting government spending, which is directed at restoring health and the national economy. So how much money is allocated? Let's see the number in the next graphic. This is National Economic Recovery Budget allocation for 2021. Health sector, as much as 176.3 trillion rupiah. Priority programs, 125.06 trillion rupiah. Social security, 157.4 trillion rupiah. Support for MSME and corporations, 186.81 trillion rupiah. And business incentives, 53.83 trillion rupiah, the total budget of 2021, as much as 699.3 or 43 trillion rupiah. The government said that the increase in the National Economic Recovery Budget up to 21% is a step to encourage the effectiveness of the National Economic Recovery, which is expected to accelerate in the first quarter of 2021. The design of the National Economic Recovery this year is said to be modified, one of which is the budget for a health program, soaring to 176.3 trillion rupiah, in which the increase is due to increased spending in the health sector, covering diagnostics for testing and tracing, treatment costs, vaccination programs, health tax incentives, and other treatments. Meantime, one program that is equally important is the Social Assistance Program, which has even been stated by President Joko Widodo that the Social Assistance Program must be continued, where according to him, the program can help the lower class to meet their needs and increase people's purchasing power, which is expected to become an economic driver. And hopefully the government will still be able to maintain a prudent level of state budget deficit while continuously accelerating the national health and economic recovery. Stay tuned on Market Headlines because we'll be right back after the break. our last segment. At the Jakarta Composite Index Intraday movement earlier today, JCI was open at the level of 6,280.73. Then approaching the closing time on the first session, the index was on the level of 6,285.06. Then the index was showing strengthening trend by the second session closing time. Index was closed at the level of 6,289.64. In short, JCI went up 0.62%. And next, we're going to see the sectoral movement leading the dynamics of today's trading. We got infrastructure as the leader of the strengthening trend, went up 1.04%, and mining went up 0.95%. And next, we got mixed industry as the leader of the weakening trend, went down 0.39%, and consumer goods went down 0.07%. And moving on to top gainers and top loser, here are the key highlights from today's trading session. Antam went up 1.72% to the level of 2,960 rupiah per share. Telkom went up 0.29% to the level of 3,490 rupiah per share. Bris went up 4.96% to the level of 2,960 rupiah per share. And Friend went up 13.04% to the level of 78 rupiah per share. Meantime, the top losers for today's trading, we've got Astra International went down 0.89% to the level of 5,575 rupiah per share. BBCA went down 0.3% to the level of 33,525 rupiah per share. Agro went down 0.35% to the level of 1,410 rupiah per share. And BMRI, or Bank Mandiri, went down 1.57% to the level of 6,275 rupiah per share. And this is the intraday movement of rupiah towards US dollar. Open at the level of 14,871. Rupiah was also showing weakening trend towards US dollar. It was closed at the level of 14,818 rupiah. In summary, rupiah went down 0.47%. 3 years ago, Bank Syariah Indonesia's market capitalization was 4.96 trillion rupiah. But now, Bank Syariah Indonesia is now included in the top 10 issuers with the largest market capitalization on the Indonesia Stock Exchange, whereas the market capitalization is now worth 115 trillion rupiah.
Bank Syariah Indonesia stock is now officially included as a big cap stock. Company's stock is included in the big cap list, which has a market capitalizations of more than 100 trillion. Based on the data from IDX Equity Daily Trading Publications, as of February 24, 2021, the PT Bank Syariah Indonesia's market capitalization reached 115 trillion rupiah. These market capitalizations went up significantly compared to when the company first conducted its IPO, whereas the market cap was only 4.96 trillion rupiah. The President Director of Bank Syariah Indonesia, Heri Gunardi, hopes that with Bank Syariah Indonesia's positions as a top 10 issuers with the largest market capitalizations of Indonesia Stock Exchange, it can make the stock to be more favorable by the public. From all sources, IDX Channel.
Indo Tambang Raya Megah net profit in 2020 fell to 39.747 billion US dollar compared to the same period in the previous year, amounting to 129.43 million US dollar. The significantly reduced profit was influenced by the decrease in net income last year.
Indo Tambang Raya Megah net profit in 2020 fell to 39.47 billion US dollar compared to the same period in the previous year, amounting to 129.43 million US dollar. The significantly reduced profit was influenced by the decrease in net income last year. Based on the company's consolidated financial statements for the period ended December 31, 2020, the net income over the past year was only 1.19 billion US dollar, or lower than the previous year, which reached 1.72 billion US dollar. The financial report shows that the company is quite capable of reducing its cost of revenue in 2020 to 986.19 million US dollar. Thus, the company's gross profit last year was 199.15 million US dollar, or lower than 2019, which was 326.69 million US dollar. The profit was recorded at 37.83 million, or decreased compared to the achievement in 2019. From IDX Channel's coverage team, reported.
And step aside from market condition as coronavirus pandemic takes big role on current economic situation. And here it is an update data about coronavirus globally. And the news close our market headlines today. Please enjoy our next program on IDX Channel, your trustworthy economic, business, and capital market channel. I'm Wicky Adrian. Have a nice evening and stay safe.